At this point he ran up to the statue with the instruments, but it turned out to be a guardian, and instead of instruments he had a shield. He mistook it for another and struck, and Jinwoo was wounded. He did not, however, give up the suspense of dying there and crawled on, hoping to find the statue with the musical instrument.
Now
he was
good.
always on the cusp of death, always grasping the thread that kept him from dying, but now it could break at any moment. As soon as Jinwoo heard the tune, he sighed. For a second he thought he was going to be killed, but at the last moment he was able to get to safety. He was wounded and exhausted. Julie came running as soon as it was safer, and from what she saw she couldn't hold back the tears. "Your legs!" she shouted at the top of her voice. She saw a lot of blood that was everywhere. Jinwoo was lying on the floor without one leg, but the healer begged him to hold on a little longer, and she could stop the blood and heal his leg. However, she did not expect that the fact that she spent a lot of mana would make her feel bad. She'll be fine, lucky that Jinwoo was able to survive such injuries. There were 17 of them, but in the end there were only 8 left, and 2 of them were severely injured. "Mr. Song, it's unfortunate that you are injured, but it's because you made a lot of rash decisions. After all, you are the reason this happened. Are you willing to be punished for that?" "That bastard is attacking again," the group of survivors thought. "Don't tell me he's attacking again." They felt everyone's legs buckle and thought it was an earthquake. But the monster lifted something off the ground. This was the altar on which the sacrifice was to take place, and the final commandment, "Prove your faith." "This was the final test, no matter how foolish I was," said one of the hunters. "I know where this will lead. Mr. Song, does this mean that someone has to sacrifice himself?" 5. Aiming his dagger at Mr. Song, one of the hunters began to say that everything was his fault. He said that his 10 men had died in vain because of him and that he should take all the blame. Mr. Kim was right, and no matter what happens next, I'm willing to take responsibility. The only one who was against it was Jinwoo. He started screaming that it was mean to say he was guilty, since you all decided to come here on your own. At this point, Mr. Song walked into the circle of the altar and saw a strange light that lit up red. One tribe told Jinwoo, what could it mean? He asked the guys to help him get to the altar.
Whatever
they thought
could
they
it
were
mean?
safe now, but the gate had opened a week ago, and it was unlikely the hunters could save them now. But these things will move before reinforcements arrive. The guild is not likely to dare send someone to check here so quickly. It's only a D-ranked dungeon. The gates will open after 7 days. That means if we don't close all the monsters can make it to the surface.
Oh yeah.
If we can't do that, that big statue can get out. Most likely, the ordeal will begin when all the survivors are able to enter the circle. So it did, once everyone was assembled and all the lights came on. There was a sound of the hunters shouting, "Did the door finally open and we could get out?" But now anything could happen. The statues that were standing still began to move. They slowly but surely watched the altar. They didn't know what to do, and there were so many of them, and a little bit of them began to surround them. The group of hunters began to realize that if they didn't look at the guards, they would keep moving. The group of hunters began to realize that if they didn't look at the guards, they would keep moving. But what was that? She was able to run out of the cave, but the Jinwoo realized that if one person leaves the altar, the lights go out and the gate closes a bit. Those commandments were hard, but the last one was very clear. When they went into the circle, the lights went on and went out as long as the person left the altar. The hunter who stood and held the wounded Jinwoo could not endure and asked forgiveness, then rushed to the exit, from which Jinwoo fell to the floor because he was missing one leg. He shouted, "Stay where you are or we will die." There aren't enough of us all to look at every statue. Jinwoo understood that. He understood that all the blue lights had to burn out and then the ordeal would be over. But it could also mean the opposite, that the doors could close back. No one would think that the weakest hunter could be so useful. Everyone looked up to him. Many died when they entered the dungeons, but those who survived, thanks to you, Jinwoo, thanks to you, and I am alive. But I can't stay here anymore, I have a family too. I can't die here, Mr. Kim shouted to Jinwoo. But all he heard was sorry. He ran off and threw the rest of Jinwoo to his death, dumbfounded by such an act he certainly didn't expect. The gate was about to close, and now they realized that everyone had to leave, but one person would stay and sacrifice himself. So it was decided that Jinwoo and Madame Chiyul would leave together and Mr. Song would stay. But as soon as Chiyul wanted to get up, her legs, they did not obey her. It was because of the depletion of mana. She used it a lot when she healed Jinwoo. "Mr. Song, help her get up. I can't walk with my leg. You are the only one who can help her. Take care of her." As soon as they left, Jinwoo was left alone. He sat by the altar and thought only that thank God he is the